This is California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. We are joined today by Ed Chau. He is a member of the California State Assembly. And so I want to speak with you about water. There is no doubt that the entire state is suffering from a drought. I know you've heard that the state is considering the imposition of fines. On the most basic level, what do you think about that before we talk about groundwater, if I may?
Absolutely. As we know, the state of California is experiencing one of the worst, one of the most severe drought conditions in history. And in response to that, the governor declared a state of emergency, as we all know, and we also passed legislation to allocate about $680 million.
That's right.
To fix it. But I think in the long run, we still need to look at perhaps a bond measure so that we could clean up, a lot of the issues related to water.
Well, let's talk about the bond, if I may, because we know that as we speak today, who knows what's going to happen in a few weeks, but as we speak today, we don't know which bond measure will be on the ballot, if at all. Right. Do you feel as if we need to focus on getting a bond measure on the ballot?
I think it's important that we do, and at this point, the bond issue is still being negotiated and debated, and hopefully by the end of August, we will have language. We will have a bond that's going to go on the November ballot.
Let's talk about one element of the bond measure.
Sure.
Which many Southern Californians hope to see as part of the bond package, and it deals with groundwater. We know that in the Southern California area, a lot of our groundwater is contaminated.
Correct.
Before we talk about the bond element, I'd like to talk about a bill that you are marching through the legislature that deals with cleaning up groundwater in the San Gabriel Basin, the San Fernando Basin. Talk to us about your provision, your bill.
Absolutely. This is AB 1043. As we know, the San Gabriel Valley is actually situated on top of the main San Gabriel Valley Basin, which is about the size of Lake Tahoe.
Wow.
And which supplies water to approximately 1.4 million people here in the area.
Right.
So having clean water is extremely important for all of us. Now, back in the days when the aerospace industry was operating in the area, and this was around World War II area and beyond, and we had a lot of jet testing in the area. Now, a lot of the jet fuel actually seeped into the underground basin, contaminating the water. So as a result, groundwater cleanup is extremely important for all of us for years and years. Now, my bill 1043, what it will do is that it will basically direct proceeds recovered from polluters back into the area where the pollution occur.
Under current law, what happens?
Under current law, the money that we recover, the proceeds will go to
Superfund money?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Will go to the state. So my bill will direct the money, the proceeds, back into the area where the contamination really occurs.
So if a polluter in this region, for example, the San Gabriel region, pays up, under Superfund, the money will get to be spent here.
Exactly.
Definitively, all of it,
exactly.
not have to be sent to Sacramento and then divvied out.
That's exactly right.
So that could be controversial.
It could be, but it also provides the incentive for these Prop 84 grantees to pursue these polluters. So that's another benefit to the bill.
So where does it stand today, this bill?
The bill is still in the legislature,
okay,
going through the process, and I'm hopeful that it will be eventually signed by the governor.
Okay, along these lines, let's talk more about groundwater, because there is no doubt that you and many of your colleagues want to make sure that in addition to 1043, that a bond includes sufficient monies for groundwater cleanup and groundwater development. Do you feel as if those provisions will make it into the bond? Are you going to fight to make sure they do?
The latter. I think we will continue to fight to make sure that provision stays in the bond.
I want to shift gears, if I may, and speak about education.
Sure.
We know that the school year is before us, and we know there are a lot of changes going on in public education, focused specifically on the Common Core standards. The Common Core standards rely heavily on what we knew as 21st century technology. Of course, recently we had these field tests, standardized field tests, which were using computers to see how the children would do on a new type of standardized testing model. We don't know what happened, but what we do know is that the future is computer technology, computer education, and you're looking to ensure that California students are able to advance in those fields. Talk to us about what you're doing in terms of computer ed.
Absolutely, you got it right. I think as technology advances, we need to train more people in the computer science area. And in fact, according to the Labor Department, by the year 2020, it's estimated that about 4.6 million jobs will be out there. So we need to train our children to prepare them for the workforce when it comes time for them to enter the workforce.
Your staff provided me with some statistic which I found to be fascinating. With the recent AP Advanced Placement Exam in Computer Science, a total of about 1,100 females took that exam. That's it. Whereas in AP Calculus, about 23,000 girls took the exam. Both low numbers, but the computer science numbers are incredibly low.
Absolutely right.
And also people of color, very low rates in terms of taking the exam for computer science.
So that's why we need to rectify that situation. We need to incorporate computer science into the curriculum and start them young. In fact, my bill will ask the superintendent to develop model curriculum for school districts to use for students in grades 1 to 6 so that they could start learning the fundamentals of computer science. And not only do they use the computers, but also be innovators and creators of computers.
Sir, forgive me, but how do we not have this now? I mean, it just seems so obvious that we would have this, and it should have been adopted 20 years ago.
Exactly right.
What's going on?
I think one of the issues is the cost of implementing some of these policies, and the other probably is the fact that we're not promoting this enough. So we need to continue to, get this message out there to tell them that computer science is important and computer science is fun. Computer science is going to be very helpful to all of us, and that's where the jobs are also.
Despite their gene pool, my daughters are excellent soccer players. How that happened, I don't know. They are 12 and 10. My eldest daughter's team won the state. They won the nation. It's a miracle in itself. But be that as it may, they have some phenomenal people working with them, keeping them healthy, keeping them safe. Right. I was stunned to learn that some people that are working with our children may have good intentions, but may not have the training to keep our children safe. Talk to us about what you're looking to do to make sure that our athletic trainers, a term of art, are keeping our children safe, and adults, I guess, as well.
Absolutely. One of my bills actually deals with athletic trainers. And here in the state of California, we are the only state in the country that does not recognize, regulate, or license this profession called athletic trainer.
The only.
The only state.
Even Texas regulates.
That's right.
Even Texas. So
That's
out of 50 states, 49 regulate, plus DC, we're the one that doesn't.
Right.
Wow.
Now, these are the professionals who deal with physical injury-related activities, for example, and they are also engaged in they work in different settings, for example, universities, clinics, and clubs, and the like. And they serve a very important function. Now, imagine this. I think we need to have people who are properly trained to work with our kids when they get injured.
So what are you looking to do as part of your legislation, which I understand, is it pending on the governor's desk right now?
The legislation is currently pending.
Well, hopefully by the time this airs, it will have been signed.
That's right.
So tell us about AB 1890.
The bill will essentially provide that only people with certain training and certification can call themselves athletic trainers. It's a title protection bill. It does not grant a license per se, but only the bill will say that if you completed this requirement or certification or education, you can call yourself an athletic trainer.
I've seen business cards which say athletic trainer on it from people at the gym, and I think, that's interesting. But it could be that that's a term they're using, and there's no actual certification.
Correct.
You feel as if, before we know it, the governor will sign, or we don't have a sense yet?
We are very hopeful that he will sign because this is a very important bill.
His name is Ed Chau. He is a member of the California State Assembly representing beautiful portions of the San Gabriel Valley. My name is Brad Pomerance, and this is California Edition. Welcome back. It's California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. We are joined again by Eric Bauman. He is the chair of the Los Angeles County Democratic Party, vice chair of the California Democratic Party. The June primary is behind us. What do you think about your slate of candidates constitutionally?
I think it's extraordinary. I think we're moving ahead towards a wonderful November here in California, and we're going to lead the nation with that big blue beacon of hope called California.
Let's talk about the top of the ticket, if I may. Your nominee will be Jerry Brown. Is Jerry Brown the incumbent? It's hard to deny that most polls suggest that he is likely to be victorious in November, taking nothing away from Mr. Kashkari. What's your sense of why Mr. Brown seems to be a big favorite?
You know what? Jerry Brown has delivered exactly what he promised. He said he wouldn't raise taxes without a vote of the people. He didn't. He said he'd get the budget back in balance, close the $60 billion budget deficit. He's worked with the legislature to pass legislation that actually makes life better for people, from passing the Middle Class Scholarship Act to implementing the Affordable Care Act here in California, which we call Covered California. I mean, he has done exactly what he said he's done. And the amazing thing is there's nobody that understands California government better than Jerry Brown. He understands every nuance of it.
And I want to talk about the Affordable Care Act. Surveys have come out recently, and I don't care what one thinks about the Affordable Care Act, it's hard to deny the statistics, the numbers. Again, I'm not taking a position, but if you look at California, the proportion of uninsured declined from 22% to 11%, all through the implementation of the Affordable Care Act. What does that say to you, both in terms of the effectiveness of it, but also the political ramifications of it?
Well, look, first of all, the Republicans have done such a good job demonizing it that people hated it when, even if you went through the individual provisions of the Affordable Care Act and you said, do you think that people shouldn't be banned from coverage because of pre-existing conditions? Do you think that kids ought to be able to stay on their parents' coverage longer? As you went through it, people said, oh yeah. Then you say, do you support the Affordable Care Act? Oh no, that's terrible. But here's the bottom line. The Republicans said young people would not sign up. Most important thing of all, in order to maintain a balanced risk pool for health care. You know what? Young people have signed up in droves.
Yeah, as I understand
in fact, I want to make a point. Mm-hmm. Across the country, more insurance companies are bidding for next year's, for second year's inclusion than in the first year's inclusion, which tells you that it's been a success.
In the recent survey that came out from the Commonwealth Fund, the largest gains in coverage were young adults, 19 to 34, Latinos who had not been signing up early on, and the low income. So, but what does this mean electorally, that the Affordable Care Act, with a bumpy rollout, seems to, if you look at the statistics, be a success?
I'm not sure what it means in 2014. It takes a while for this to sink in. But what people will soon be realizing, I mean, here in California, 3.5 million people have health care who didn't have it a year ago. So pretty soon that's going to sink in and say, wait a minute, that's what President Obama and the Democrats delivered for us. That is huge.
But if you look at those three groups, young adults, Latinos, and low income, they have a lower propensity to vote.
That's true, and they're all Democrats.
And those tend to be Democratic categories. What are you doing as chair of the LA County Democratic Party, as vice chair of the California Democratic Party, to motivate these folks that have presumably benefited from the initiative of a Democratic president to get them to the polls in 2014?
You understand that if I gave you that tactical information,
well,
you'd never be able to appear on the show again.
More generally, though.
Look, of course we're going to them. We're going to those voters, and we're making sure they're voters. Mm-hmm. And we're going to them and we're saying, look, we kept our word. We delivered what we said we would deliver. Now we need your help. We need to be able to pass this kind of legislation, everything from immigration reform to education reform. We need our folks to come out to vote. And here's the deliverables to prove that we kept our word.
2012, it's hard to deny, was a banner year for the California Democratic Party. President Obama took this state with over 60% of the vote. The California legislature went 2/3 for Democrats in both the Senate and the Assembly, giving them a supermajority, which allowed the Democrats to really push their initiative, although some have argued that they worked with the Republicans throughout this process. because of a series of events, the Democrats have lost that supermajority.
Only in the Senate.
Only in the Senate, which is true. When you look towards 2014, do you see the Democrats maintaining supermajority status or regaining supermajority status after this convention?
I think, contrary to conventional wisdom, I think we're going to actually pick up seats in the Assembly.
In the Assembly?
In the Assembly. I think we're going to pick up seats. The Senate has a fight on their hands. This is a different electorate, although November's electorate is a much more blue electorate than the June electorate. It's not like a presidential year. And the reality is the working people who are Democrats have a much harder time getting to the polls. Because, you know, if you live in Lancaster and you work cleaning a hotel in Century City, or if you're a teacher's aide who lives in Boyle Heights and works in a school in Santa Monica, you spend hours a day traveling. So the secret is for us to put ballots in their hand. That's why vote-by-mail voting is so important.
You mentioned the Senate, and part of the challenge behind the California Senate and the loss of the supermajority was 3 members of the Senate have faced scandal, corruption charges. All 3 are Democrats, completely independent of each other, which is interesting. It's not like it was swooped up in one shrimp scandal. How does that play out? You know, it's hard to know if it really played out in June, although the Calderon family had a tough night in June. But how does that play out?
I think every poll shows us that the voters don't connect that. They realize that those are individual politicians who had individual problems, and I think that's true. And part of the unfortunately, one of the difficulties in politics is that most people believe all politicians are crooks. So when something like this comes to light, people say, "Oh, gee, that's, you know, what a shock." The truth of the matter is most politicians of both parties are good people who care about this state and care about this country.
I want to hark back to 2010. In 2010, there was a Republican wave that swept the entire nation and stopped right at the Sierra Nevadas. California's Democratic Party had a great 2010.
Yes.
That could happen again in 2014.
It could.
And
I can assure you that at least this side of the Sierra Nevadas, it will.
So,
we're working hard to make sure that's the case.
But why is that? Why is it that California continues to be so deep blue when the rest of the nation, blue at times for presidential and then in non-presidential?
The people of California are possessed of wisdom.
But I understand, but there's got to be more to it. And, you know, can you impart your wisdom to the Pennsylvania Democratic Party, the Florida Democratic Party?
Here's the bottom line. We have worked hard to deliver in California. And after 16 years of Republican rule, Gray Davis got elected governor. His governorship did some tremendous good things. People were terribly angry about the energy crisis and the budget crisis, so they brought in Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was proof positive to the people of California that Republican ideas don't work.
As we speak today, we don't know whether Hillary Clinton will be running for president.
I'm ready for Hillary.
Okay. Talk to us about how you and many California Democrats are ready for Hillary.
You know, I think having somebody with her experience from being a lawyer, a first lady, a United States senator, secretary of state, she's the whole package. She's been through the most difficult of times politically, and she's risen to the challenge.
But is she the whole package to Virginia, to Florida, to Pennsylvania, to Colorado, to New Mexico, to purple states that she'll have to win if she does win?
First off, if you believe the polls, she certainly is, since there's not a Republican that's within touching distance of her. And by the way, once again, the Republicans have this mix-up of, 24 potential candidates who are already fighting with each other.
His name is Eric Bauman. He is the chair of the Los Angeles County Democratic Party, vice chair of the California Democratic Party. I'm Brad Pomerance. It's California Edition. This is California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. Today we are joined by Uri Resnick. He is the Deputy Counsel of the State of Israel in the Los Angeles region. And sir, I want to speak with you about the conflict that's going on in Israel. I think there's a lot of confusion, a lot of lack of knowledge about what the conflict is about, the genesis of it. If we can back up for a second, we know there's the West Bank, we know there's Gaza, but we hear that they aren't unified in terms of Palestinian statehood or whatever it may be. Could you explain for our viewers the West Bank and Gaza?
Okay, well, the West Bank and Gaza, actually, these are areas that when Israel was founded in 1948 were each separately occupied by neighboring countries, by Egypt in Gaza and by Jordan in the West Bank. In the 1967 war, the Six-Day War, where Israel was attacked and had to fend off an attack on several fronts, at the end of that war, Israel was in control of these lands.
Including the Sinai as well, by the way.
Including the Sinai, which was then, in the context of the Camp David Accords, was ceded to Egypt, and the Golan Heights in the north. In the Oslo Accords in the 1990s, there was a process of negotiations between Israel and what became the Palestinian Authority, with the ultimate goal of establishing a two-state solution. With the idea, it began with Gaza and Jericho. These were Jericho being in the West Bank and Judea and Samaria and the Gaza Strip. And this was a process which was supposed to lead to a two-state solution between Israel and a peaceful, demilitarized Palestinian state. Unfortunately, waves upon waves of terror since the mid-1990s have basically derailed that. And there have been repeated attempts since then to renew the negotiations, including in the past year, under the major efforts made by the American administration, by the Secretary of State. Unfortunately, these attempts haven't yet succeeded.
But as we speak today, it seems that while there is tension in the West Bank, we know of the tragedies that occurred in the West Bank with regard to the young Israelis that were killed, the Palestinian that was killed, most of the conflict right now is in the Gaza Strip. Why?
Look, the Gaza Strip, since 2007, has been controlled by Hamas. Hamas took over in a violent military coup. It basically exiled or threw out of power the Palestinian Authority. So we have now Hamas, which is a terrorist organization recognized as such by the United States, by the European Union, by many countries around the world. It's devoted to the destruction of Israel, and it's committed to doing so violently.
But in the West Bank, there's another Palestinian group. It's known as Fatah, is that right?
There's the Palestinian Authority, the prominent or dominant party in which is Fatah. It's headed by Mahmoud Abbas, President Abbas, and that is our interlocutor for some kind of negotiated peace. Unfortunately, the Palestinian Authority does not control, since 2007, Gaza. Now, just to point out also to the listeners, in August 2005, Israel completely withdrew from Gaza. It uprooted about 10,000 Israeli civilians, completely removed any military presence. So since 2005, we have no presence in Gaza. There's no occupation there. There's no Israeli presence there. There's no reason for Hamas or for anyone in Gaza to really be attacking Israel, and yet they have been.
But as we speak today, we know that the Gaza Strip has Egypt on the south, Israel on the north, I guess, and east as well. And, you know, they say they feel like there's a chokehold. And the goods can't come in and out. I mean, this is...
But it's just not true. I mean, there's a lot of misinformation and just outright propaganda. There are crossings between Israel and Gaza for all of these years, since 2005 and since 2007 when Hamas seized control. Goods are going in, humanitarian goods. There are hundreds of international projects that Israel is helping to foster with the international community, with the United Nations, the UNDP, and international partners. It simply isn't true. It is true that there is a naval blockade imposed by Israel to prevent exactly these thousands of rockets from coming in. That is true. It does not impede civilian goods from coming in.
As we speak today, the conflict is continuing. I want to get a sense from you, what is it like day in and day out living in Israel with rockets coming in, sirens going off, the Iron Dome shooting missiles out of the sky? You can see them being shot, especially in the southern cities, Sderot, Ashkelon. What is it like?
You know, it's a little bit misleading, because on one hand, Israeli society is extremely resilient. And since our inception 66 years ago, we haven't really known a single day of true peace, the kind of peace you have in Europe or in North America. It's been a constant sense of threat and danger. Of course, this becomes acute in periods where we're really being physically attacked with missiles. You know, you have kids in kindergartens, you have families sitting in their living room with 15 seconds warning when the sirens go off to either race to special rooms. It's something, again, that would be unheard of. I'm sure in the United States, every building in Israel, every new house is fitted with a bomb-proof room.
I was actually in Israel a few years back, and I went to someone's home. It was a very modern new home on a moshav, which is like a kibbutz almost. This beautiful home had a bomb shelter in it. I thought, wow. And she said, oh, that's common.
That's common. So these are the new homes. For recent years, all new homes have that mandated by law. But a lot of Israeli residents and civilians don't live in new homes. And in those homes, there aren't such rooms often. Often there may be a bomb shelter around the corner. And you have 15 seconds. If you're on the 4th floor with no elevator, think about going what could be 200 yards away outside, going all the way down the stairs. It's just not realistic. It's not going to happen. So what many people do is they huddle in the stairwell, which is considered relatively safer within a tall building. Most Israelis live in apartment buildings, so it's safer. But that's really the picture that you see of neighbors huddling in the stairwell. That's no country can live that way. Which society could live that way?
Polls indicate that in America there continues to be support for the state of Israel throughout this conflict. The one area where there seems to be some break in the support is the sense that the Israeli response to Gaza rockets is disproportionate. How do you respond to those concerns that this is a disproportionate response?
Honestly, as I think all Israelis would feel immediately, that it's senseless. It doesn't make sense to say that. We're being attacked with thousands, hundreds and thousands over the years of these missiles. What can we do? What are we supposed to do? So not only is Israel's response not disproportionate, it's unprecedented the extent that we're going to avoid civilian casualties on the other side.
As I understand it, flyers are being dropped, text messages are being sent to residents of the Gaza Strip. And is it true? It's hard to know that Hamas is telling them ignore the flyers, ignore the text?
Of course, it's quite true. In fact, in the past they were a little bit more reticent to say it openly and explicitly. This time they have it in writing. The Hamas's Ministry of Interior has issued written edicts basically ordering people to stay in their homes and disregard. This is just, it's outrageous. It's irresponsible behavior on the part of that government.
What's interesting is you see these death counts. And it seems that Israel is attacked because Israel's death count is very low and the Gaza death count is higher.
Look, one thing Israel will never do is apologize for not being killed by those who are attacking us. We're not going to apologize for that. We're going to take whatever steps we have to protect our civilians and to protect the civilians on the other side, more so than any Western army or any Western government has ever done. And it's, it's not only the flyers and the SMS messages and so on, the warnings in advance. It's calling off missions as well. Israel and the Israeli army has canceled missions in flight because of conditions on the ground that were too dangerous in terms of the potential to harm civilians. And it has to be understood what that means. That means that those are rockets that then land on Israeli civilians. So Israel pays a price to that extent, where we put some of our own people in harm's way to avoid harming the other side. I don't see anyone ever in the history of military conflict having gone to that length.
As I understand, you will be returning to Israel soon. Excited, nervous, fearful, hopeful?
Fundamentally, I am confident. In Isaiah, there's a very beautiful passage which says that in calmness and confidence should be your bravery. And I think this is something that's true of Israeli society in general. I think we're confident and we're calm in the face of this, these horrific threats to our children and our people. We won't be deterred. It's very important for us to have international support to help keep us that.
His name is Resnick. He is with the Israeli consulate. I'm Brad Pomerance. It's California Edition.